Okay, so we're going to record this straight onto the phone, no editing, no fancy YouTube BS, because I feel like this topic, this idea of building out my notes, is something that should be as genuine as possible. So, no tricks, no nothing, no fancy, no fancy edits, no music. I've been struggling for a long time with trying to get digital note apps to work. Just to work. The process itself, I always seem to get caught up in the details of the digital notes, and then I never feel like I have control. So I always find myself running back to notebooks and to paper. And more recently, I find myself running back to index cards. And I've used index cards. I've done a video on the past on one of my YouTube channels, my other YouTube channels, about index cards and using them in a very basic form, which I still do. That's what these 3x5s over here are. These are my pocket notebook. I carry 3x5s with me. I usually have a pencil. Not these particular pencils. I usually cut these in half, and I have a holder that I can put it in my pocket so I don't stab myself in the leg. But a pencil is nice to have on the go because a pencil doesn't run out of ink, and I always have knives on me so I can sharpen them. So I don't have to worry about not being able to write when I'm out. They go by on the 3x5s. I like having a difference. What I want to build right now is I'm going to try to build a Zettelkasten for the first time, a genuine analog Zettelkasten. So I want the size difference. Number one, I want more room to write my notes on. These, some people call them permanent notes, but these notes that are going to go into the Zettelkasten, these encourage brevity. So immediately I know when I see something on 3x5 that it's a temporary note. When I see something on a 4x6, I'll know that it's something I'm keeping, something that's going in the slip box, which I'm using this right here. I think Global Weiss is the company. You can find these on Amazon very easy. I got it, I think it was a little less than $20, which is actually honestly expensive for cardboard. But it does have a nice plastic slider, so when you're putting the cards in, you can keep them up tight here and they don't do what that just did. You just have to type in 4x6 index card boxes and you'll find something like this. This comes in black like this, and then there's like a marbled mint green one. I have that one as well. So that's where I'm going to start. I have two of these, one in black, as I said. There's a couple in the closet over there for 3x5s. And I have this one and the green one. So what you see here, these are 3 of the 4 original cards that I have. My purpose here in making the Zettelkasten and making these videos is, instead of learning all of this and then sharing what I know as an expert, I want to go through the journey. I want you to start with me. These are my first cards. Let's see what I learn. Because I think that there's value in that, in the sense that I kind of wish somebody was doing this, that I could watch it on YouTube as I do it. So if you're in a similar place where you're realizing that analog is kind of the way to go, that you feel in the pull towards it, we're going to go through that. We're going to probably talk about frustrations with the process, talk about the frustrations with paper over digital. I don't know how the journey is going to go because it's genuine and it's happening in real time. So these are my first, I said 3 or 4 cards. There's another one over there, but that one has personal information on it, so you don't get to see it. So let's look at these 3. I think these 3 are kind of interesting as well because they kind of display different styles. And I don't want to lock myself into one specific style. I just think that the most important thing when I pull a card out of the system, that I get value out of it. So whatever way I need to represent that information on each card to get that value is what matters. This specific style here, where we have a title at the top, this here is a description of the idea. Complex systems yield unpredictable results. Here's my words, in my words, what that means. I have a visual representation of it, and then underneath I have a relation to something in my personal life. This is something that I got from a YouTube video. I don't remember the creator's name. This was an idea that somebody was trying. I thought it was a neat idea because not only relating it to something personal, but putting a visual representation and as well forcing yourself to think of a visual representation of abstract ideas is a great way to reinforce the I put it in my own words benefit. So this card was done in that style. I put the source on the back here so you can see this is an idea that came from Nassim Taleb's Anti-Fragile, and I actually put the first 3 words of the quote and the last 3 words. I'm probably not going to do that again because it's not that important that I go back to the exact quote that often. It's more important that I get the idea, and that if I need to find it, I'll know what page it's on. So I'll probably stop there, and I'll do this a little bit differently. These are going to change a lot. This one here is like the most basic form you can here. I was watching a video on YouTube about Zettelkasten, and this was something that someone mentioned in one of their cards that they used it as an example, and I was like, oh, that's a pretty good one. Maybe I should write that down. I reworded it into my own words. As you can see, I did not do this form. And then this is a card about making this style of card. So I actually made a card about how to organize that kind of card. These are my first 3 cards. Here's where I'm a little bit nervous about this system right now. Oh, I forgot to point out on this one. I tried out blue ink for the title, black ink for the actual content of the card, and then red for the card numbers. Card numbers is where I'm having a problem right now. I'm worried about. 2 reasons I'm a little bit worried about this. Number 1, this is probably a bad example. I don't know. Let's just deal with card number 1 here. So card number 1, the idea with Zettelkasten being that the next card that I put in should be in conversation with this. That is to say, the next card that's related to this topic should be placed in here in a way that's related to it. So we have meditation, loving kindness. Perhaps I run across something about the benefits of compassion, which would be a response to this. It would be further exemplification of why, I say exemplification of why a meditation of loving kindness would be beneficial. So I would probably put that as 1A, right? And that's the idea that you keep building on that if you're building basically an outline structure. So there's that, and then the next card that you add, if it is an addendum to that, then it's 1 line indented underneath in an outline. If the next one is furthering of the idea on this card, then it's another indent. But if it's another example of this or another further of this idea, but not down the path of this one, then it becomes a sister to that one or a sibling to that one. I hope that's making sense. Think of these as dots on an outline. So the reason I went through that is this is the problem that I'm having. This idea, thinking about it as an outline structure, is, in my mind, assuming that the card you put in is the top level card. So in other words, let's go back to my example of the 3 indents, right? This is a furthering of this, and this is a furthering of that, right? So that's the assumption that the card you put in is the card that belongs here. But what if the first card you make is actually here? You know, it belongs here. So the second card you make, you go, oh, that actually goes above it. How do you do that? You know, if this is the first card I made, then this one would be number 1. So how do I make a card that goes above it? You can't. So that's one of the things I'm worried about. The way that I'm dealing with it in my head so far, obviously I don't have enough cards to worry about it yet, is I'm thinking that sometimes maybe when you put a card on the next level, on the card you can make it clear that this comes before it in the hierarchy. Because in reality, you're just looking for the chain. The hierarchy itself, the top level, second level, that's less important than the fact that when I get to this card, I know that if I follow this line through the next cards in the box, I'm going to get a lot on the topic that I'm looking for. So I know that if I land here, I can find my way to this one, even if this is the specific one I'm looking for. So I think that's how you deal with it. The other way, I guess, maybe you deal with it is maybe after some time you just have to renumber cards and reorganize them when the structure starts to exert itself. I've heard it said that Nicholas Luhmann, the creator of this style, Zettelkasten style of note-taking, he referred to the system as both order and chaos. So maybe that's what he was referring to. You know, the fact that there's always an emergent structure going on, that means that there's always some inherent kind of chaos in the system. Like, oh, this section needs reworking, which makes me nervous. But I think anytime you're investing time into organizing thoughts, there should be a little bit of nervousness. The other thing I'm not sure about is, flip these all back over. As you can see here, these are all separate ideas. So 1, 2, 3, right? That means that if you consider these all top levels, that when I get to, maybe 1,000 of these, it'll be 1, 2, they'll all be numbered to 1,000. This card, for example, this is a useful card. I'm not sure I'm going to ever have anything that goes under it. So is that a waste of that number? The number 3. Some people I've seen create sections, like this is my history section. So they'll do, this card would be, if this was a history card, which is not, this is we'll call this a religion card. Maybe religion is section 1, so this card would be, instead of numbered 1, it would be section 1.1. Because the 1 in front of the period would be reference to the section, religion, and then the number 1 would be reference to the card. And then maybe this card would get filed in business, because Anti-Fragile is technically a business book, right? So this card would be 2.1, because this would be the first card in that section. That seems nice. It seems comfortable, like I know what section to put this card in. It deals with kind of my worry about accumulating a lot of numbers that don't have anything after them. But I think the problem with that, this card exemplifies pretty well. I said I would file this, I guess, in business, because that's what people consider the book. I don't read a lot of business books. So this card could be alone if I created a business section just for this card. Or this card could fit in multiple categories. Maybe this fits in business. Maybe this fits in mindfulness. Maybe this fits in system building. Who knows what my categories would be. So I might find myself, if I create categories, I might find myself creating cards that belong multiple places. Now, Ryan Holiday, who does not do a Zettelkasten but does use note cards, when he encounters something like that, he said he just creates multiple copies of the cards and puts them in both places. But the point of the Zettelkasten is kind of to let structure emerge on its own. So I think the idea of creating groups ahead of time is antithetical to the idea of Zettelkasten. I'm no expert. I do watch a lot of videos on it. I just bought a book on it. I'm trying to learn the essence of the system. It's not the minutiae of the system we're worried about. I'm worried about capturing the essence. That the parts that are important, like the idea of emergent structure, is an important part. So I want to make sure that I allow for as much of the emergent structure. If you're not familiar with what I mean by emergent structure, I mean that the more cards I put in here and the more that I begin to create subdivisions and they begin to group, a structure itself is going to make itself apparent. If I have 15 cards about history and only one card about business, that's an emergent structure. And the structure that's emerging is, hey, your focus is history. Maybe this is just a hobby. This is your focus of study. Things like that. Or the idea of the cards, as I understand it, they're supposed to be a conversation. You know, this was said, well, this card is a response to that. It either furthers that idea, or it gives an example of that idea, or it contradicts that idea. That there's a dialogue happening between the two of these. And one of the things I don't particularly like about these cards right now, and it's also because they're not in conversation with each other. As you can see, 1, 2, 3, they're all three separate ideas. I don't want to write a lot of cards like this, which is, I mean, it's not terrible, but it's really just like, this is the basic idea. It's like writing a definition card. What I feel like these should be is a small, I don't want to say journal entry, or a small, I want it to be a small piece of writing, that all my thoughts and ideas on this thing are embodied on this, so that when I pick up one of these cards and I pull it out, I'm giving myself a lot of value. This doesn't give me a lot of value. It just gives me some basic ideas. And I think that idea that a lot of people talk about, the idea of the atomic notes, which Luhmann apparently never spoke of. He never talked about any of that idea. I think it, even though technically the cards or the notes, if you're using something digital, they're connected, that when you write them in definition form, or you write them in this condensed atomic form, you're actually creating an isolated thought silo instead of the conversation. This should be, every time I sit down and write a card, it should be something that I'm so interested in that I write the card, that I gush about it. That, man, I hope I can fit all my ideas on this. If not, I'm going to continue it onto a second card. If I have to continue it on the third card, then I'll continue it on a third card. So that when I am in the future looking for something and I pull a reference and it says, go to this, and I pull these three out, I go, oh, cool. There's so much here for me to work with. I think that's the point of the Zettelkasten. The point of, people seem to focus on the linking, but I think the linking is less important than what you're putting in here. What are you giving your future self? This gives me very little. This gives me very little. This gives me a lot more. Something even longer and more elaborate than this will give me even more. If I could go off on this for 3 or 4 cards and really explain every implication that I'm getting from this concept and this idea, then I have a lot more to work with. So that's what I'm thinking so far. This channel, for the most part, is going to be dedicated to this process, or if I fail and have to go back to something else, it's going to be dedicated to that journey. It's going to be dedicated to the tools that we're using, how they're working. So as you can see, the way I've talked about these cards, I already think that what I have is imperfect, but I think the only way I'm going to figure these things out is by moving forward. So if you're into note-taking and you're curious about analog, or you're already into analog, I'm going to slap the desk 3 more times. This is what this channel is going to be.